Don't cry because it's over. Cry because the voices are trying to kill you. Or the trumpet man is trying to kill you. Or the British are trying to kill you with 2 tea bags in 1 mug. Those fiends! Welcome to Channel 8.5. Hello, and thank you for joining us at Channel 8.5, a show all about movies and TV and pop culture. My name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna.
Andrew, how are you doing today?
Joe, I'm doing well. Today we're doing something a little bit different because both Ted Lasso and Raised by Wolves just concluded their pilot seasons, and we wanted to circle back and discuss the seasons as a whole. We did also want to explore the brand new show Monsterland that just premiered on Hulu.
It's the spooky season. It's October. Obviously, a show called Monsterland is what we have to talk about.
Did you just say spooky season?
Spooky season indeed.
Did you watch John Oliver's
Spooky.
Did you watch John Oliver's last show?
No,
Or do
why?
you watch last
I
week
don't
tonight?
watch John Oliver.
He loves to do these local television stations or local news networks, just like the things that they are obsessed with during that week and that they all say. And he just did a montage of all of them saying, "It's spooky season."
Really?
And Joe, you just joined their ranks.
Spooky episode of Channel 8.5.
Oh, lordy. But yeah, so let's start with Monsterland, and then we can move on to our season explorations of Ted Lasso and Raised by Wolves.
Let's do it.
What did you think of this?
I think that
feeling?
it's mislabeled is what it is, because Monsterland sounds like a fun, pulpy, Goosebumps type jaunt of a movie, or in this case, jaunt of a TV show. And boy, is this not.
Yeah, I was actually going to say this is definitely going to suffer from drive syndrome, where it's marketed to a specific audience that will not like it at all. Like if you're looking for horror, you're not going to get it. You're going to get some sort of social commentary presented in the way that horror is usually presented.
It's part of a new genre, really. Very much, we talked about The Lighthouse a few weeks ago, elevated horror, which is a term that kind of got popular, whether it's a derogatory name for these types of movies, but The Lighthouse is one of them. Hereditary, which is very popular, is also falls into the subgenre. Midsummer from the same director. It's a horror, quote unquote, that is more focused on familial drama or the dramatic aspects of it than scares. It's more horrific things happening as opposed to Jason cutting a dude's head off with a machete, even though in Hereditary some heads get loose.
I remember you likening it to Hereditary, but I don't know that I agree with that necessarily, because it is uncomfortable, but there are no monsters or supernatural elements that are at least real, because many of the quote unquote monsters are manifestations of real pain and trauma, depression. Whereas I feel like
in Monsterland,
in Monsterland, whereas Hereditary and all those, there is like a clear antagonistic force, be it demons or a cult or things like that. I honestly think that this is more of a definitive indication of a new, or a rather resurgence of a movement, which I think was brought on by Jordan Peele, because Jordan Peele
Get Out falls into this category too.
Shifted the landscape of horror with Get Out, akin to what Christopher Nolan did with superhero and action genre, because Jordan Peele took a look at racism from the perspective of horror and continued that tradition with Us and Twilight Zone and now Lovecraft Country, which makes sense why he did Twilight Zone, because Twilight Zone was kind of the first of its kind. And so I think if anything, it's closer to Jordan Peele's work as well as Black Mirror, not so much because it's an anthology series, rather because it's tackling social issues through genre.
Yeah. And we should set the stage that Monsterland, if you haven't seen it, it's an anthology horror show on Hulu. Each episode is its own self-contained thing. It's its own story. Generally speaking, the characters do not overlap. Now, there is an example that some of them do. In the first episode, Caitlin Dever, for example, plays one of the characters who shows up sporadically, I think twice, in other episodes. In episode 2, she shows up for a little bit, and then there's another episode where she shows up in the same episode that Mike Coulter is in. Mike Coulter played Luke Cage on Netflix. But generally speaking, you can just go in, you could watch episode 4 right now, and you're not going to be missing anything. Doesn't matter which order you watch them in.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about this is that it engaged me on both an emotional level as well as kind of the thrill level. And it was just all tied together with solid filmmaking. Like I said, the obvious thing to compare it to is Black Mirror, but I think that this resonated with me more on an emotional level, because I would say that Black Mirror, with the exception of a few episodes, they were incredibly cold and kind of just stark.
So are these. So you like this? You like this more than I did, apparently.
I actually really did like this because I feel as though this was more intentional in confronting those social issues a little bit more head on than Black Mirror did, because Black Mirror had enough high concept to kind of distract from that. Whereas this, it is heavy and it is not an easy watch, like you had told me before. I mean, the first episode, right out the gate, we're doing bedroom abortions. I mean, that is just,
We are.
I mean, its difficulty lies in the truth, and all the stories take place in different cities and states across the country.
Yeah, that's the titling convention is, New Orleans, Louisiana is one episode.
Yeah,
Newark, New Jersey is one episode. So that's the convention.
exactly. And what I've seen, and I only watched the first 3 episodes, it seems as though the emphasis is on those suffering with poverty, because even in the 3rd episode, the New Orleans episode, they are wealthy. However, the mother came from poverty,
Yes.
which leads her to do what she ended up doing. But I thought that this was just powerful. And I don't know that this is something that I just throw on while I'm eating dinner or something.
No, and that's the problem that I had. I was like, okay, it's Saturday and it's noon. What are we going to do today? We're going to watch Monsterland because it's going to be a fun time. It's not a fun time.
No, it's not. And that's why I feel like the marketing, however intentional it was, is incredibly misleading, because it's more about social issues that we're facing in this country.
It is, and it's giving a perspective to people, like you said before, working class, poor people that isn't sugarcoated. Most of the
Yeah.
time, friends, right? One
Hmm.
of them is a waitress, one of them's an actor, but they all live in a fancy apartment in New York, which none of them could afford.
Yeah.
Except for apparently Phoebe, because I guess her parents owned the building. I don't watch Friends. Something about Phoebe where I guess they threw something in there being like, yeah, they can afford that apartment because Phoebe's family lives there. It's fine. Don't think about it.
It was
Joey's
also the
doing some bits.
90s, and it was a great time for economic growth.
Exactly. They're all like, we're not spending money on music because we all got Napster.
But I feel like horror traditionally relies on imagination, but this type of horror basically says you need not go further than your own backyard or your own neighborhoods, countries, your own self. I mean, America in this is Monsterland in a sense.
And the people in it are Monsterland. That's the whole point, is that just
Yeah.
regular people are the monsters of Monsterland. And especially at the end of the first episode, right? I don't think we're doing spoilers right now, just we're talking generally, but
Hmm.
you come to understand the reasoning behind why a character does what they do in the very last moments of the episode. And that is the horrific part of it,
Yeah.
is that not only do you understand, you go, yeah, well, I kind of get it.
Well, I mean, yeah, that first episode, just in the first scene with the
Hmm.
kid, I'm just like, oh my god,
They did such a good job of setting up the world and the
yeah,
tone
no, I completely
and
agree.
really putting you in Caitlin Deaver's character's mindset. It was exceptionally well done, but
Yeah.
don't watch 4 of them in a row, is what I'm saying, like I did. Because you just curl up on the floor and you just start drinking Jack straight from the bottle, going, "What have I done? It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday."
I watched 2 episodes and finished at like 2 a.m. and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to sleep after this." Not because I'm like afraid, but it was just so depressing. And I hopped onto Modern Warfare and I just played a few games just to get my mind off of it.
Oh, we're gonna talk about it later, but I had to throw on some Ted Lasso again
Yeah.
just to make things okay in my brain.
I think we can go into spoilers though, at least for the first 3 episodes, because I haven't seen beyond that.
Okay,
But that should give you a good overview of how the show's. I mean, the first episode really set the pace for the rest of the show, and then the second episode is
it
where
did.
you kind of grasp an understanding as to what they're going for.
Much more social commentary in the second episode. We can give the synopsis of the second episode.
I
Basically,
think the
it deals
first
with
episode too,
yeah, I guess, but social
because
commentary in the brash headlines of hate groups in America, I guess. The very eye-catching, clickbaity type of a headline. Lower
yeah,
class
like
people in Louisiana is a social issue, and the poor.
no, I think it was, if anything, it had to do with like abortions and things like that. The fact that the girl was
Yeah,
about to go to the extent of basically removing the baby herself and being somewhat trapped, and her entire life being dictated by one mistake and one terrible thing that happened to her. And then also the fact that she, as a woman, has to carry the consequences, whereas the man can just pick up his jacket and walk out the door.
Hmm.
All of it's really social commentary, but I would agree in that the second episode is a little bit more in your face.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Let's get into
Yeah.
spoilers. I'll go back to the first episode. What'd you think when she left the baby, or her, not the baby, her child at the end of episode one? Because I got it. I understood because minute one
Yeah.
of episode one, you go, man, this kid is annoying.
I thought she was gonna get the guy to kill the kid.
What?
Yeah. No, maybe I'm messed
You're
up
the
in the head.
monster now, Andrew.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point, though. I think that is the point. By putting you in the mindset of her character and just how just oppressive and depressing her life is, you understand why she would do something so tragic and horrific as leaving her child in the backseat of a car. And you're going, wait, am I also the monsters of Monsterland? Am I the problem here?
Yeah, and it's traversing subjects we don't like to talk about. And the first episode forces you in the position of this girl who never really had a chance at life beyond that one mistake that she made. And if we as a viewer cannot stand the screeching and yelling of this kid during that 1 hour long episode, imagine dealing with it for what seems like 5 years. I think she was around 5 years old.
Exactly. You understood the motivation in the same way why you understand why Walter White started selling meth. That's
Yeah.
not condoning it or saying that, hey, you know what I'm going to go do? Start selling meth. But you understand why he did it. And that's the point. And that's what made it a very well executed show. It's
Yeah.
really well done, just like I said before.
I agree, and it was incredibly effective because it put into brutal terms what some of these single moms go through, especially in rural areas that often lack social safety nets and supports, especially for a teen mom in a town like that. I mean,
She was supposed to be a teenager, wasn't she? Or early 20s? Because
yeah, early 20s,
I
but
thought
she
so
had the
too.
baby when she was a teenager.
She must have been. Because Caitlin Dever herself, I think, is in her mid 20s. And
Yeah.
she's really good in it, although her Cajun accent does fade in and out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. It's more kind of overt in some scenes and then it
Yeah.
tapers off in
Drops off
others.
a little bit. Like when she's yelling, she doesn't quite have the accent.
Yeah. I mean, you see those moments where you get these brief flashes of her as a teen when she's riding her bike at sunset and she's wearing this colorful makeup and just looking so carefree. And then immediately pulling you back to the reality of now where she's wearing a diner uniform, smoking cigarettes, and is just jaded and beaten down. To think that in 5 years, this kid had to grow up and before ever learning to care for herself, she now has to care for another human being, and in the process is likely going to foster her daughter to continue this vicious cycle. And it's interesting to me that we still have yet to talk about the quote unquote monster or the serial killer, but the conversation she has with him in the diner, where she basically says, when you're born, there are infinite future versions of yourself, and that with every decision you make, those versions of yourself slowly die off until you become who you are, which is so relatable yet devastating that at 19 or 20, however old she was, she already feels as though she has become who she will be for the rest of her life. And even when she tries to start a new life, she's sobered up very quickly to the reality that this kid is going to hold her back no matter what. And it's just so tragic. And you're left uncomfortable because though you don't condone her leaving the child, you also understand. Yeah, I don't know. That first episode.
The second episode, though, the one in Oregon that deals with hate groups, that's a much more overt social commentary, much more on the nose.
I mean, yeah, you see his situation as well. His mother had a stroke, his father left. They have no money, not even for the medication for his mother. I think the moment that really lays out the thesis for that episode is when he says, "Do you think that all the bad things that happened to you are just a coincidence?" And again, you understand why this kid and all the other kids in that chat room are seeking this shadowy group to hate or wage war against. Oh god, this one too.
All of it was. Do you see why you shouldn't do this all in one day?
Yeah, no, you
Like
shouldn't.
me, like an idiot,
I don't know how you're still here and you didn't just off yourself.
right? And even episode 3, the last one that you saw, I love the New Orleans setting and I love the jazz setting.
Mhm.
The monster in it, the creepy trumpet man,
That was the
he
first time you actually see an actual monster truly.
well, I mean, episode 1, the dude's peeling off his face. That's monsterish.
Yeah. I mean, he's more of like a serial killer slasher type. And then the second episode was more
Eh, well, that's more real. That's not even
yeah.
monsters.
Well, the shadow,
monsters and yeah, there were shadow people kind of.
yeah.
But
But the third
episode
one
3
was
is
that
where
was the
it's
first time
true
where
creature
yeah,
type of
exactly.
monster.
Exactly. I guess what I mean to say was most indicative of the name and the poster.
I don't think that you got to the best episode, though, personally. I really did enjoy the Newark, New Jersey episode with Mike Coulter.
Mhm.
It involves actual literal angels falling down, and he finds one,
Yeah.
and I did like that one a lot. Maybe it's 'cause I'd taken a break from it and come back to it with fresh eyes, and in the context of this show, it would literally be fresh eyes, like, I peeled them out of someone's skull. Luckily, that didn't
Yeah.
happen, 'cause if I was in Monsterland, but that one is really good. I like that one. The most depressing one, weirdly, is the one with Taylor Schilling from Orange Is the New Black. I found that one to be the most depressing. Oh, it's
I haven't seen it yet.
Plainfield, Illinois is the episode where
Okay.
she's a lawyer that
Don't give me the end, though.
I won't give you the end. Basically, it involves a married couple, and one of them watches the other one commit suicide and then come back as a zombie. Yeah, it's real good times. It's
Jesus.
really well done, though. It's good.
Yeah.
But again, maybe sandwich it in between some New Girl after, before and after.
I think the third episode is probably my favorite out of the first 3.
Oh, I did like the first one the most, personally.
Really? Out of all
Yeah.
of them?
Yeah, out of all of them.
Really?
Yeah,
Why is that?
because I liked the ending. I liked that they actually did go there with her leaving
Yeah.
the kid.
Yeah.
That they would quite literally make her the monster of the story in the long run.
The third one, I think I just love New Orleans as a setting, like you were saying, and then also I think The Sun did such a phenomenal job, and they did a great job of choosing kind of a babyface adult to play him
Yeah.
because he even says, "I'm still that scared little kid," and you realize that the monster was something the mother made up. It was a projection of her own atrocities,
Mhm.
but I will say the visual of the monster was pretty great in a freaky kind of way.
Yeah, I liked the imagery. I liked the
Yeah.
design of him.
Yeah, he was really cool, and even the way that the father kinda reacts to the situation and things like that.
Yeah. The father is played by Hamish Linklater, and he's in Legion too, and he's really good in Legion, although he doesn't have much of a part in that up until the last season. He's really good in it, though. I like
He was
every
in something
performance in
else.
this too. This whole show is
Phenomenal.
all the way through. It's
Yeah,
really great actor showcases for everything.
yeah. But, like, you wonder what the pitch meeting was for this, like, did they just have, like, a list of screwed up things that they wanted to talk about? "Alright, Johnny, you get abortions, you get, school shooters, and then we're gonna go for pedophilia
You
with
take a
Jason Momoa."
suicide.
Like, what the hell, dude? Yeah. I am going to watch the rest of this. I really like this.
Boy, good luck for you. I don't wanna watch this ever again, although it's really great, but I don't need to watch it again.
Yeah, I don't know that I would rewatch it. I don't even know that I would recommend it to anyone. That's the thing. This is very I mean, the way it's marketed, a lot of people are gonna be angry.
It has currently right now a 5.4 on IMDb with 656 votes. Although I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it on the internet, it doesn't seem like one of those shows where people really want to discuss Monsterland. Not even in the way that Lovecraft Country got into social issues, because at least Lovecraft Country had pulpy fun elements to it. Lovecraft Country is a show that is fun to watch while
Yeah.
also has the social element to it. This is just oppressively
Yeah.
just depressing.
Because Black Mirror is depressing, and I had a difficult time getting through all of it, but I still enjoyed it in the sense that it was presenting these really cool high concepts.
It's
Like
more
e
outlandish.
exactly,
It's
and
weird to say that when we're talking about a show where a man peels his own face off and there's angels coming from the sky, but somehow in tone, Black Mirror feels more outlandish.
because they're usually set in a different world in a way, whereas this is meant to take place in present day America and confronts the issues head on.
I'm glad that we've started with this because we definitely didn't isolate the audience or drive anyone away. So let's move on to something happier and talk about Raised by Wolves, because that's not depressing at all either.
Exactly. At least Raised by Wolves has knock knock jokes.
Let the fun continue on Channel 8.5.
So last we left off with Raised by Wolves,
Mhm.
we were 3 episodes in. We watched this together, and we were both somewhat taken aback and weirded out. And I'm curious as to what you think now that the first season has just ended.
Oh, I'm still curious and weirded out, but just to an even bigger degree, because obviously we're talking about finales in this episode, so we're going to be talking about spoilers. If you haven't seen it, come on back, because there's no way that I can accurately describe to you the sheer monstrosity, and I mean that literally and figuratively, of a finale that this was. So, Mother gave birth to a snake baby through her mouth, and it's part human snake baby and a part animatronic snake baby from what might be a god like
N-
fake god in a machine.
So I actually think that it's part android, part snake, like the snakes that they first found.
The bones.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the bones. What I realized is when I think it was Campion who asked Mother, "Is the baby going to have the same powers as Mother?" And they basically say, "I don't know." I think that it does take a part of Mother because now it flies. Snakes before didn't fly. That's why you have all those holes that they burrowed into the ground. So it seems as though they've now used her to evolve their own species. And I don't think it was a god necessarily, because the whole time I'm thinking, okay, is Saul real?
And that comes a lot from the Mithraic people being led by the atheist, a fake atheist at this point, who starts having visions, played by
Yeah.
Travis Fimmel, Marcus, who is experiencing visions in his head. And what he thinks is now he is a vessel for a soul. He is now kind of a believer. Actually, not a kind of, he is a true believer. He's become corrupted or gone insane by what I think is the weird sentient planet. It's clearly a sentient planet.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's a lot of biblical symbolism in this. We've discussed this before. Adam and Eve, mother and father, and then the serpent that corrupts Eve is basically the serpent that comes out of mother in the end of the finale. Because they're all hearing the voices. I think Campion at one point heard the voices,
Campion hears the voices.
and then Marcus hears the voices.
Even mother and father are seeing ghosts.
Mother hears her voices too. Like when
Mother
she's
hears
about
the
to give
voices
birth,
too.
she says, "Where's my baby? You said," and then she gets cut off by the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's obviously starting to hear things. And multiple times people have said to Mother, "You sound like you're religious."
Yes,
I think that while Mother was in the simulation pod, she was likely inseminated by something.
probably. Yeah, all of what she saw was more than likely fake.
Yes, exactly. Because it
Or was it the planet infecting the machine and using the machine for its own will to infect her? Or was it placed there by the Mithraic people to begin with before the pod even got there?
No, I think the pod was there from the crash landing, and I think you're correct in saying that it's likely the planet or the sentient being, whatever it might be, was the thing that was forcing Mother to see these visions. Because even when she gets into the pod, it literally tells her that this is not created for androids. So you're already told right off the bat that this shouldn't work. And the fact that it does only furthers the hypothesis that it was likely tapping into her, I guess, reserve memory to show her her creator and things like that, which I really like the creator a lot.
He was very good.
He's not in a lot, but
Mm-mm.
he looks like a younger, more fit, better looking Russell Peters. Because the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, this guy reminds me of someone I know, and I don't know why. And then last night, I was like, oh, he looks like Russell Peters.
I'd be so insulted if I was Russell Peters, and then I would take out a stack of money and light it on fire because I'm super rich and not care.
Exactly. It's funny because I have a high tolerance for weird. If anything, I seek it out. And this was just on a level that I don't think I've ever.
Did you feel like that because you felt the steady hand of the season chugging forward? It's not like it was going off the rails. There was clearly somebody steering this ship, to use a terrible metaphor because of the show, obviously, but there was a guiding hand through this show that kept it on track so that it could be weird, but it was clearly driving towards somewhere.
I think that's why I liked it, yes. And I think that that's likely part of my reservations and my worry about the second season, because I thought this was going to be a miniseries, right? From what we had discussed, I thought when we looked it up, it was a miniseries.
I think it might have started that way, but then again, I read an interview with the creator of the
Yeah,
show
I just read this.
on Collider where he said that he has basically a 5 or 6 season arc planned for it and already knows how the show is going to end.
Oh, maybe I
And
read something different, because
maybe,
apparently this might be an Alien prequel.
is that because of Ridley Scott's involvement?
That's what I thought. I was like, okay, people are
It
saying this,
it
but
also does take a lot of cues from Prometheus in terms of the visuals and kind of even the story, the inception of the story.
and the thing that she kills looks like that one thing in Prometheus.
Mhm.
The really kind of like gooey skinned type white, kind of pale.
I mean,
So I don't know.
anytime you have alien monsters projecting themselves out of people, you have to think of Alien because of the chestburster scene.
Yeah, and it wasn't, honestly, it wasn't even that. And I completely set that aside because look, I mean, a lot of times you look at J.J. Abrams, you look at Guillermo del Toro, their monsters have very similar attributes. And so this could have just been, like you said, the hand of Ridley Scott, and that's just his monster style or his alien style. However, from the interview, it seemed as though Ridley Scott was very apprehensive about allowing this to be an Alien prequel.
Involved with Alien really in any way.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
and he's like, "I just don't wanna keep going back to the same well,"
Why
but I
can't I
don't know
escape Alien?
if yeah, seriously. And I don't know if it is a direct prequel. I hope it isn't. It seemed as though they were alluding to that, but I really, truly hope it isn't because I actually really love this story.
I don't think it will be. I don't think it will be an
Yeah.
Alien prequel, even though it comes close and it comes thematically close to Prometheus and things like that. I don't think it would be a Alien prequel just because of the showrunner, Aaron Guzikowski. I'm probably going to
Yeah.
get that name wrong, but just from what he said, it doesn't seem like it's going to be an Alien prequel so much
Mhm.
as more of like his treatise on religion and belief. And Alien doesn't really get into that as much. Prometheus kind of does. Alien is much more of a pulpy thriller, a pulpy space story where everyone gets murdered except for Sigourney Weaver at the end.
Yeah, yeah, it's more kind of blockbuster. This isn't. This is very
It's more creature,
heady,
yeah, it's more creature
philosophical.
feature than anything else,
Yeah.
which obviously is what it is.
I think if anything, this feels like an allegory for humanity as a whole. I think there's something exceedingly hilarious about androids trying to cope with human emotions. Just them trying to have a logical conversation about their feelings, which inherently are irrational, and father feeling jealous and things like that.
Hmm. Mother and father are the most human characters in this because the Mithraic, they're wacky. They're just bananas.
Yeah,
They're these religious zealots, and they don't seem human at all. They seem, except for the main two, except for Marcus and Sue, they do seem very caricature like. Not caricature like. That's
no, no,
unfair, but
I would say they
one
are,
note.
exactly. They're very over exaggerated versions of religious zealots, which they were during the Crusades, right? I mean, that was likely the disposition they had going into those wars, is that we're justified because we're backed by God himself. It almost feels as though it's a cautionary tale for interpreting prophecy in the same way that Game of Thrones was. However, in this, it was more about trying to decipher God's will, and that it's easy to attribute meaning to anything to fit your own narrative because they want to believe in soul somewhere in them. Like even Marcus, who was oftentimes more averse to the Mithraic
Hmm.
than his wife, bought into it so quickly because he was made to feel special.
He bought into the power that he had leading these
Exactly.
people. Not the soul
Exactly.
bit, but the fact that he could just have people listen to him. And then through the course of that, started to believe in soul, but then he also started hearing voices in his head. So which of those things, it's a real snake eating its own tail sort of a thing.
Well,
Again, to accidentally use a pun.
well, and also, I mean, the fact that he was able to make a guy spontaneously combust, basically,
Yeah,
like the power that comes from that. And she even says, "Oh, we're not going to the tropical zone." And his wife is like,
because you love the
enjoying
power too
being,
much.
yeah, exactly. You're enjoying being worshipped so much.
And he's like, yeah, it's great.
But it's interesting that the prisoner, the rapist,
Hmm.
also
The
was
man in
hearing
the
the
Iron Mask,
voices. Yeah, yeah, the man in the iron mask. That's
Leonardo
what I was
DiCaprio
thinking too.
himself.
Yeah. But the fact that he was doing what he thought was soul's bidding, if anything, it was worse. And the whole time he's like, "Why won't you keep talking to me?" And Marcus is somewhat intrigued and curious. And then the same thing happens to Marcus. So it's almost as though this voice uses the people to carry out its bidding and then casts them aside. And then once they're cast aside, they basically go mad trying to hear the voice again
Hmm.
without realizing that it's something that's manipulating them. And I think I said this last time, it really explores common relationship cliches through the androids as well, just kind of human nature.
It did that with the cheating storyline between mother and father, and
And even when Mother was kind of denigrating Father
I wasn't
and
into that
sort
as
of
much.
him being kind of emasculated, and it's just, it's very, Interesting. And then father wanting to erase his memories is effectively what people in marriages do when
Hmm.
they're trying to get past a certain tribulation.
There was a whole Michel Gondry movie about it.
Yeah.
It's called Be Kind and Rewind.
Not what I expect you to say. Did Michel Gondry do Be Kind Rewind?
Yeah,
Oh my god, I had no that doesn't even seem like a film that he would make.
I know. I liked Be Kind and Rewind,
Oh, I
but
love that movie.
a little bit off of Michel Gondry's normal, let's
Yeah,
just do wacky stuff path. But Be Kind and Rewind is a little wacky in the premise.
it is in a very kind of campy way. It's fun. I love that movie so much. It's so much fun.
It is fun.
I mean, you wouldn't be able to make that today.
No, because nobody knows what rewinding a videotape is.
The kids don't know what a VCR is or a
No.
cassette tape.
You could do that, though. You could just do that on YouTube, where they all make remakes of all their favorite things.
But the motivation, I think, was stronger, that he's just like
True.
completely erases his entire like father's
Yeah.
video store's archives. I mean, that's so funny to me. But it's interesting to see, going back to Raised by Wolves, it's interesting to see the seeds of civilization on a new planet and the competition for dominion between the different groups and how they'll likely carry over from generation to generation. When you think about our current geopolitical conflicts, they all began somewhere, sometimes deriving from events that are generations removed from those currently engaged in them. So you can imagine that thousands of years in the future of this planet, the wars and disputes between the different countries or communities will likely find their roots in the inciting conflicts that we're now seeing.
Well, and quite literally in episode 7, they say, "We're not here to repeat history." And it's like, that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's not true at all.
And Campion, the creator, says they're always going to end up destroying themselves. That's just always, there's nothing that you can do.
Basically, everything everyone says in this is a lie. I mean, when Mother meets the creator in the machine, which was ultimately a lie also, he says to her, you'll never malfunction. That's not your purpose unless you want to. And she says, I want to succeed in my mission. Well, that's a lie. She wants to believe in what he told her.
Yeah, because to exist or to be conscious will always come with a search for meaning in your existence. And Mother's arc began with an understanding that she was merely an android with a mission. And as the season progresses, she begins to learn that she is more than that and that she possesses these desires that she knows are not natural for her as an android. Even Campion, and I think Tempest asks her something to the same effect, but they say, well, what do you want? And she says, I am incapable of want. I serve one purpose. However, all of her actions say otherwise. So it's interesting to see these androids begin to lie to themselves in the way that humans do. And when she finally meets her creator, he is like a god to her. And he validates what she's been feeling all along, which is that he's more than just an android. Essentially, I think, therefore I am. It's just so interesting, all of it. I really like this.
But did you like watching it?
I really, honestly, after a while, I did.
See,
When I
that's
felt,
the thing. It took a while.
It took a while. I think it has a lot to do with what you're saying, is that you felt the steady hand of a good storyteller, because early on you get a sense that he knows what he's doing and he's intentional in the direction he's taking you. And I think the overarching question of the show will be, what is the voice and what are the origins of the planet?
There's definitely a supernatural thing going on. Because
Yeah.
especially at the very end, when Mother and Father go into the middle of the planet, they get spit out into the tropical zone, which is where everybody couldn't go
Yeah.
because there's some weird thing going on where they can't land the ship there, but everybody wants to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they shouldn't have ended up there. They drove right into the middle of the planet. And for all intents and purposes, they should have ended up like Terminator at the end of Terminator 2, just boiling in a big pot of lava.
You know who doesn't lie in the show?
Who? Father?
Father.
Father is this show to me. I will watch all of season 2 just about Father.
I love Father. Like the part where where Campion goes after Father. He's like, where are you going? You told me you wouldn't leave. And he's like, I've come to the point where I cannot further tolerate your mother, or something to that effect. And it just, in such a like a logical thing. I swear to God, that sounds like something out of like a divorced parent's mouth. Like, I can't be around your mother right now. That's so funny. And that poor guy, I mean, he's just doing his best. And he really is just so endearing.
He is.
His knock-knock jokes really make him, honestly.
You want to know why you like him so much? Because he's the only one who tries to even crack a little bit of a joke. Everybody else is all just sad and depressing and like, what is my purpose here? And he's like, knock, knock. Why are you so sad?
I honestly feel as though the the kids loved both mother and father because of father, because of the kindness that they experienced from father.
When they betray father too, they feel really bad about it. They accept him back.
Even the kid who basically gets him shot
Mhm.
ends up helping him, and I actually started to really like that kid toward the end. I thought he was very interesting.
He was real annoying at the beginning and then kind of came around at the end.
His arc was really good. He played it very well,
Yeah.
and I like that he played a very interesting role.
Mhm.
But what I was going to say is that given the mystery of what is the planet and what is the voice, it reminded me very much of Lost. What is the island? What is the black smoke?
See, I haven't seen Lost.
I know you haven't, but you know those two premises, right? That they're
True.
supernatural and things like that. So my worry was, is this going to be another Lost? But what I liked about this and what differed from Lost is that rather than continually asking questions that compartmentalized all the questions from the first season, for the most part, we got answers to.
Many of them.
Many
The
of them, right?
lingering questions were introduced in the middle of the season, like, what is
Exactly.
soul, or is soul real? What are the
Yeah.
voices? But a lot of those questions do get answered.
I think we got that answer, right? Soul is probably not real, and this voice is the snake, is what it seems like.
No, I think the snake is part of the planet, Ego the Living Planet. Kurt Russell returns. What this is a Marvel show
Of course,
that's
yeah.
Trojan horsed itself into an HBO Max show about feelings and religion.
They made it just for me, didn't they?
Exactly. They were like, he doesn't like Marvel. We're going to get him. Ego the
We're gonna
Living
get him.
Planet. Here you go. Here's some weird robot sex monster. Okay, I will be honest with you. When Mother goes in to see the creator in the machine,
Yeah.
literally, my first thought was, he's going to have sex with that robot. And sure enough, he did. Why can't dudes just make a robot that they don't want to have sex with?
It was a Rick and Morty episode, just
It was.
spread out over like 10 episodes.
Ex Machina, great movie. Oscar
Yeah.
Isaac, he totally wants to bang that robot. Every robot that a dude ever makes.
That's actually very true.
Why
Trying to
can't-
think of a robot that hasn't been banged.
Why can't we just be friends with our robots?
You want platonic robot friends.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want the robot that helps Mother give birth. He seemed like he was real fun.
Oh, I really liked him.
I know,
right?
so did I.
He's the poor guy is standing there, like hung up from the ceiling, and he's like, "I really wanted to see my brothers again, just not like this." And he just kind of like he looks just so uncomfortable.
He was having a good time.
He was a really interesting droid. I really liked him.
But I think he is, in a twist, the one who says the thesis of the show. I only know what I've been programmed to believe.
Oh yeah. Oh, I completely agree. When he said that line, I was like, "Oh, that's very interesting."
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to what you believe is, I honestly do think that soul was something that was likely man-made, and that when they got, I guess, signs or the voices, they
The
attributed
ghosts.
it to whatever they already believed. And so I honestly think that those questions were answered, at least for the most part. But what I liked about this is that it's compartmentalizing the questions and answers. So we've gotten a lot of the answers, and then now we're moving on to a whole nother set of questions that were asked, and they're still building upon one another. However, I didn't walk out of this feeling as though I was shorted any answers or tricked or anything like that. No, I felt as though this was a very satisfying ending to the first season. This was slow enough to be able to comprehend the subject matter, but also fast enough to, I mean, there was momentum to this where you never felt bored.
Did you feel like Lost tricked you in the
I
end?
didn't feel tricked necessarily. It was more of just, I felt as though, okay, I hopped into a car and you didn't know where you're going, and now we're
at a Taco Bell at 3:30 in the morning, and how did we end up here?
I was promised Disneyland. Now I'm at that one roller coaster in the middle of the desert on the way to Vegas.
Oh yeah, you don't want to go on the roller coasters on the way to
No.
Vegas.
We've been on that one.
the weird rickety like Old Man
What was it
Pete's
called?
roller
Old
coaster.
Man Pete's,
No,
yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but it sounded like that.
Hold on, let's Google this. Buffalo Bills Resort and Casino.
Buffalo. See, you can't name a resort and casino off after the villain in Silence of the Lambs.
Permanently closed?
Permanently closed.
Wow. That's so sad. Well,
Is it? It's
yeah,
not.
maybe it's not.
It's probably better off for everyone.
Oh, dude, that place was so creepy. Anyway, how did we get to
I
Prim?
don't know. Because we were talking about Lost.
Lost. Yeah. I was promised Disneyland. I got Buffalo Bills Casino roller coaster.
In Prim, Nevada.
Whereas this, I have confidence in the showrunners, and it feels as though they know what they're doing, which I appreciate. Honestly, as long as you know where you're going, I don't care how weird it gets. But did you like this?
I liked it by the end. It got me at the end. I was a little wary in the middle, and I was kind of getting fed up with Marcus and his soul nonsense. But by the end, I enjoyed it. I did like Mother and Father. I liked that they all got together at the end. The Marcus stuff, I was the least engaged with. Marcus got annoying. And I didn't realize how their son realized that she was a fake. That Sue was a fake version of his mom.
Oh, the
I maybe
snake told him.
Wait, the snake told him?
The planet told him, basically. The voice. Whatever
Oh,
voice
was that?
they're all hearing. Yeah.
Okay.
Because he has a way, whoever it has a way of
Kurt Russell, Ego the Living Planet. Thank you very much.
exactly. Yeah, I think that's what it is. He has a way of tapping into people's memories, and that's how he knows. Because there was no other way for him to know.
There wasn't any other way. Maybe I just missed that, but it seemed like a very big jump for him to all of a sudden be pointing a gun at Sue going, "You're not my mom."
No, because in the scene just before it, he goes into that cave and he sees the drawings.
Yeah, the drawings of the people who were obviously there before them, because people were there before them. This is not a virgin planet.
Yeah, and that was also a very interesting
Because the monsters that they've been killing and eating were evolved humans.
devolved humans.
Devolved humans, yeah, it's a good point.
Because they found the skull with the paley white dude that they killed.
Exactly. Dennis Hopper from Super Mario Brothers
Exactly.
devolved them.
Dennis Hopper was far more handsome in that movie than this dude was.
Dennis Hopper was fantastic in that movie.
Oh, he's
He's
so
the
great
best
in that
part of
movie.
Super Mario Brothers.
I remember watching that for the first time when I was in middle school. And I remember thinking, oh, this is very obviously bad, but I'm having so much fun. And I didn't mind it.
I watched it on a VHS copy when I was little, and I loved it, and I love it to this day. And I also realized that it's terrible, but I don't care.
See, maybe there's hope for you after all with The Lost World or Lady in the Water.
Let's not get crazy.
Yeah, hold your horses, buddy.
Let's not talk nonsense. Overall, though, I'm excited for season 2, and I did not expect to be. Season 2 of Raised by Wolves, whenever that is, because apparently it's going to be 4 or 5 seasons long. So we better get really used to Soul and the weird half robot snake baby who grows up to be a giant snake like at the end of Aladdin and then just flies away.
We're likely going to have a little bit more information about the history of the planet and then what this snake thing is. I also like the introduction of the atheists at the end of the episode.
Yeah, because that was one of the pods that was launched before that
But
was
we
basically
didn't
forgotten about.
we didn't know. So in the show, we were led to believe that the atheists did not have an arc, but apparently they did.
That was stolen. This is another thing that I didn't figure this out myself. This was in the interview with the showrunner. That was actually stolen Mithraic technology that the atheists took over.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So
And
it's
I
like Pirates of
wouldn't
the
have known that.
Caribbean in space.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I'm excited for season 2 as well. But yeah, let's move on to Ted Lasso. Let's end on a nice and happy note because
An
Ted
actual
Lasso.
happy note.
Joe, what'd you think?
I loved it. And I knew that they weren't going to win. I knew that that Richmond was going to get relegated.
They shouldn't have won.
No, they shouldn't have, and I was perfectly okay with it. I loved that Rebecca now cared so much about the team, and she was devastated when they lost, and she came so far. You know, she wasn't the caricature villain at the beginning, the Rachel Phelps in Major League character.
Yeah.
I loved that Roy, he got hurt in the middle of the game and that we saw him leave for the last time and that he was so broken up about it, you know, in the locker room. I loved that moment when he was basically yelling at Keely to get out and then she doesn't.
I completely agree that because I think that a lot of times in television shows, like that would have been the cliffhanger is that Keely and him end on bad notes and we want to see them get back together in the next season. But that's not how human beings react. She obviously understands that he's incredibly hurt, that the very thing that he identifies himself with has now come to an end and he needs to rediscover himself. And I agree. I love that moment. I love that character arc. And I think overall the show, what I noticed yesterday, a lot of times it gave me what I wanted, but also
not in the manner that you were expecting.
Sometimes I don't know how to explain it, right? It was almost as though what I wanted was exactly what I needed. And a lot of times when you're watching good films and television, those two do not coincide. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you want the ending to be happy, but it's not the logical way for things to end. I didn't feel like I was being pandered to. I didn't feel like it was fan service. My sister was asking me, what did you think? And I wanted to ask you this question is, what did you think about Ted's reaction to Rebecca telling him
the truth?
Yeah.
I loved it.
Right?
I loved everything about it because the symbolism of her coming down into his locker room, into his office
Yeah.
was incredible, even in a 22-minute sitcom.
Yeah.
And then when she says, like, "I'm sorry. I wish I could go back in time and not do this, but I can't. And I've done something horrible to you. And if you want to walk away, I get it."
Yeah.
And then he goes, "No, I get it too, though." Because he was also going through a divorce. And his journey throughout was basically kind of the same as hers, but, a year later.
Mhm.
Whereas Rebecca had already gone through her divorce and gone through the trauma,
Yeah.
you could even say,
Mhm.
with Ted having a panic attack during a karaoke scene in the middle of a karaoke bar. She probably had already experienced that and gone through that too. So her saying, "I just wanted to tank the team because I hated my ex-husband so much," he gets it. And it's completely in his character to say, "I forgive you."
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that you can see him process the information,
Yes.
and almost as though he's looking at their entire relationship as a whole and seeing if this can counteract all the good things that she's done for him or all the good moments that they had, because I'm sure in that moment he was thinking, I mean, she was there for me when I had my breakdown in the
Mhm.
karaoke bar. And like you said, is very much in character. His character is a very empathetic person. And it would be almost out of character if he were to say, "Ah, screw this," and be upset. No, it was a moment where he was like, "Look, we're one and the same." And it's almost like the speech he gives at the end of the episode is that this was a tough loss. But the only thing that's harder than this is to go through this alone. So it's almost as though it's like, no, I understand, and I appreciate that he took an empathetic approach. I feel like if it went a different direction, I would have been like, "Okay, let's get this over with." Like, we
Yeah.
know that they're gonna be fine by the end of it. Why are you gonna draw this out? Like, even when he comes into the office and she can't tell him, and I'm like, "Okay, is this gonna last the entire
Are we gonna really
rest
draw
of the
this out?
season?" Exactly, exactly. And so it didn't do that, and I appreciated it. It just moved on, and if anything, that inspired her to go back to Higgins and say,
Oh,
"Look, I'm
yeah.
sorry." You see how Ted has this effect on the people around him
Mhm.
that he inspires them to be better people, including Jamie Tart in the end.
Oh, that was so amazing when Jamie gets the letter and says, "You made the extra pass. Good job making the extra pass." Especially seeing Jamie before that with his dad. 2 scenes. All it took was 2 scenes.
And what I love is that it established exactly what Ted's methodology is in coaching, is that it's not necessarily about the game as much as it is about the individual men that he's having an impact on. And he saw that regardless of Jamie being on a different team, he had an impact on him, and
Mhm.
he still wanted to commend him on making a change and becoming a better man in a sense. And you see that the effect that Ted has goes beyond the game or the team or anything like that, because that is the case with great coaches and mentors. Even in my own experience, the effect that my most influential mentors have had extended beyond school or work, and they carried over into my life and helped shape who I am.
I did appreciate, though, that they didn't play into the fantasy of Ted Lasso's all chipper, all good all the time is gonna work, because
Mhm.
with Coach Beard, when they're in the bar, Coach Beard is fed up with it, and he goes, "No, it's not just about being better people. That's fine when we were in D2 college football in Kansas. These are professional athletes, and winning is important for them because this is their job. Their job is to win, so we have to win." And I liked that Beard was so direct with him to be like, "No, man, you're not always right about your sunshine and roses all the time thing."
He needed Beard to sort of remind him why he focuses so much on these guys. Is in the end of the day, this is their livelihood, and to do right by them is to help them win in a sense
You
because
play
they're
to win the
professionals.
game.
I think that Ted believes that focusing on the players will result in them winning eventually. I think his thought process is more about delaying gratification and working on the long game, no pun intended. But because in the end of the day, Roy is the one who saved one of the goals
Mhm.
for the end of the episode. So if he would have listened to Beard all the way, they likely would have just been completely over. At least the hope would have been gone in that specific game.
Now that was ridiculous. The end of that episode was ridiculous. No soccer game is going to be 6-0 at the end. Come on now. 6-0, that's way too much. What is this? A planet talking to you and giving you visions? 6-0.
Oh, that's where Joe draws a line.
That is where I draw the line. 6-0 in a soccer match.
But I also didn't mind, for as cheesy as it could have been, the whole football formation, like the Ted Lasso special.
Oh, yeah, with the American football formation.
I thought it was sweet. I
I mean, it would
honestly,
never have worked.
I mean, you never know.
I don't care that it wouldn't have worked. I don't care that it's 6-0 and it's not real. Who cares? It was good. It was such a good finale. And the fact that you did think that they would play for the tie to then stay in the Premier League,
Yeah.
to then just be undercut 30 seconds later by Jamie, it did make it bittersweet, but also the thing that I wanted. Because if they just got everything they wanted the whole time, it would have felt too easy.
And I was almost, in that moment where I thought, okay, they at least tied the game. They're not going to be relegated. I was like, okay, I guess that's a good compromise,
Kind
right?
of
They
a
didn't
win.
win the game. They just,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of a win, if anything. But the fact that they actually did lose, I almost appreciated more. And the manner in which they lost, because
Mhm.
it was literally a result of Ted Lasso's coaching
Yeah.
on Jamie Tart that ended up helping the other team. It was a pleasant surprise that maybe they lost the game, but on a human level, I think Ted Lasso won because he felt as though he had an impact. And if anything, he understood Jamie just a little bit more in seeing that glimpse of how his father treated him.
True, but on a financial level, Richmond lost because when you get kicked out of the Premier League, you lose a lot of money.
True.
It was
True.
actually a very stupid decision, to be honest.
Well, it wasn't a decision on his part. It was
No, it was very poor coaching, though. They're going to lose a lot of money. Things are not going to go well for Richmond. I'm just saying.
But Richmond was already hanging by a thread. They hadn't been winning, and if anything, Ted was the one who brought them back.
They wouldn't have gotten relegated, though. They were
You
just a
don't think
middling.
so?
They were just a middling Premier League team. They would have probably sat at the mid to the bottom of the table, but they probably wouldn't have gotten relegated if they hadn't lost a bunch of games when Ted Lasso first got there. So really, Ted Lasso was probably a negative overall for Richmond. Just saying, just saying.
I don't think long term.
Maybe not long term, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is what I want to know for season 2, because Ted Lasso has been renewed for season 2.
Good, thank God.
I
Oof.
want to know what they're going to do, because really Ted Lasso, he's a great example of a flat character arc, right? He changes the world around him. His worldview doesn't really change that much. Sure, he went through a divorce. Sure, Beard talked to him about winning, but his worldview of positivity stays pretty much consistent the whole time, other than when he's yelling at Nate in the hotel room. That was very jarring and I didn't like it. It made me sad.
You didn't like it, or it made you feel uncomfortable?
It made me feel uncomfortable, and I was like, Ted, don't you yell at Nate.
I love Nate so.
You
I
leave Nate
can't
alone.
I can't express how much I love Nate so much. And maybe it's because he looks like my father.
He does. Oh,
He does,
he
doesn't
does look like your dad.
but he's also just such a sweet, endearing character. Anyway, continue with
And
what you're saying.
I loved his change, though. He was a great example of Ted Lasso having a positive impact
Mhm.
on him. What was he in the beginning of the season? He couldn't even string 2 words together. By the end, when he thinks he's going to get fired, he says to Rebecca, he's like, "You shrew."
True.
But what are they going to do for season 2? Because, can
Yeah, I
Ted
was
just
thinking
kind of
that too.
keep the nice guy, everybody's happy all the time shtick? And would it just become a rote
I
Disney sports movie where the team that was relegated goes down to the championship? That's what the second division in English football is the championship. And then
Yeah.
they just win the championship league and then they get promoted again. I feel like there has to be something more. And, Bill Lawrence is running the show. So he did Scrubs and he was on Spin City and he's done a whole bunch of stuff, Cougar Town. So obviously he knows how to do some of the best sitcoms. So he'll probably find something else to do other than just that boring rote story.
Was Cougar Town as good as Abed has been saying it's good?
I don't know. I didn't actually watch Cougar Town. I watched Spin City and I watched Scrubs, but Cougar Town ran for a long time and people love it.
Abed in Community was obsessed with Cougar Town.
Yes, he was.
Made me want to watch it. But yeah, I don't know. And honestly, throughout this entire show, especially in the first season, I was waiting for it to just falter the entire time.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that one episode that was going to be like, oh, okay, this is a little bit too much, but it never did. And it both scares me because I don't want that day to come, but it also excites me because it feels as though this is just a good show. And I don't think that Ted is too much of a Disney princess, in my opinion. I think he has just enough of a dark side that you can see him get hurt, and you do see him kind
And
of
making his wife say to him, the reason why we're getting a divorce is because you are too positive. You are
yeah.
too much. I thought it was a great way to sort of voice the literal thoughts that the audience has of going, yeah, this guy's a little much though. At least they acknowledged it.
Exactly, and I think that is going to be again, it's a character's greatest strength is his greatest weakness, and his greatest weakness is his greatest strength. I think that Ted's greatest strength is how kind he is and how positive, but at the same time, it can be a weakness when it comes to making difficult decisions like benching Roy. But even then, I think that he was planning on benching Roy regardless. Throughout that entire episode where he kind of went back and forth between Beard and Roy, he never gave either of them a concrete
A straight
decision.
answer.
And I don't know if that was intentional or if he was just being indecisive. I don't think it was indecisive because it didn't come off that way. It seems as though the way that he was having those conversations was somewhat intentional. I think I agree in that I appreciate that that is going to be the flaw that we're likely going to see
Yeah.
accentuated in the second season.
Does he become jaded? I feel like that would almost be the cliche, but where do you go? I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I don't want them to bring Roy Kent back. I want this to be Roy's swan song, that he's accepted his career ending.
Yeah, I don't want to bring him back as a player, but I'd be fine if they did the Jason Street thing and he comes back as a coach.
That's probably what they will do,
Yeah.
if I would guess. Or they'll bring him back in some sort of a capacity
And then
just
just
with the
seeing
team.
him and Nate just go at it about specific plays.
See, that would be fun.
Yeah, because their chemistry is really good. Honestly, even the smaller characters, like the one that was given the captain's band,
Mhm.
I love that guy. By the end of it, I was like, oh, he's an interesting character, and I want to learn more about him. And I think that that's what the second season's likely going to do, is it's going to expand on the side characters, and then also Danny Rojas. I mean, can we all just be like Danny Rojas, just yelling our names and football is life?
Even the guys in the bar got a character arc.
Yeah,
By the
exactly.
end, they were going, Ted, we know you suck at this, but you're a nice guy.
And I love that after they won that first game, they're like, wanker, wanker, and then he's like, well, it's the same word, but Beard goes, but different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. And then when he's like sitting on the bench and the old man is like, good job today, wanker.
Yeah.
And he's like, thank you, sir.
I love Ted Lasso so much.
Me too, dude. For all those listeners who unfortunately can't see this on video, Joe just put both his palms on his cheeks and
It's
just went, I
true.
love Ted Lasso so much.
I do. Everybody should watch Ted Lasso. People
I
need to
know,
know
man.
about Ted Lasso,
No, I
which
completely
sounds weird because it's on Apple TV, and I'm like, I'm real conflicted about this.
agree.
Apple
Yes.
doesn't need my help.
I canceled my subscription after the season ended.
Probably better off.
It was just so good. It was so, I don't know, man. I needed it.
Because you just watched Raised by Wolves and Monsterland and wanted to slit your wrists.
It's a nice refrain.
You're like, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to throw myself in front of that train today. Ted Lasso made it okay.
Yeah, Ted Lasso, definitely worth your time. But with that, we conclude episode 15. If you watched Monsterland, Raised by Wolves, or Ted Lasso, we'd love to hear what you thought. Did you agree or disagree with anything we discussed? If you enjoy the podcast, please consider rating, liking, and subscribing on YouTube. As we've mentioned in the past episodes, we are still working toward our goal of 1,000 followers on YouTube, so please consider sharing the podcast with family and friends. And if you have any suggestions on films, television shows, themes you'd like us to explore, or anything pop culture, let us know on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find all those links on channel8.5.com. That's channel8.5, completely spelled out.com.
We have new episodes every Thursday. Until next time, my name is Joe Galino.
And I'm Andrew Hanna, and this is Channel 8.5.